we're going to use another neck, and we're going to use a 1.5 inch piece of bias strip. We're going to sew a 1/4 seam. So we're going to place the 2 raw edges together right on the neck there, and we're going to sew a 1/4 seam. Okay, the best way to do this is straighten the seam out, the neck seam out, just don't stretch it, and sew 1/4. Okay, so when you're finished, we're going to cut away the excess bias. Okay, so this is the right side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fold this seam allowance so it's on top of the bias, and then fold the raw edge here of the bias over a 1/4 inch, and then fold it in half. So when we fold it in half, we're folding it right on top of the stitch. Okay, the key here is on top of the stitch. If you fold it beyond the stitch, when you do your edge stitch, it won't pick up on the other side. This single bias is going to be stitched on the bias, edge stitch on the bias on both sides. So when you're finished, it'll look exactly the same on both sides. So we're going to sew the edge stitch. Okay, so your fold here is going to be just underneath this presser foot. Best way to do this is straighten out your neck and fold this over. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to stretch the bias, because then by the time you get around in the middle here, it's going to be twisted, and we don't want it twisted. So we want to fold that over and then fold it over this way, just like that. So now we're covering the sew line or the seam, and we're going to start edge stitching. Okay, so I'm going to readjust again. So again, I'm folding this over a 1/4, and then I'm folding it in half so that this fold right here is on top of the original stitch that we did. So it's nice and flat and you don't see any twisting. And we're going to keep on sewing. All right, when you're finished, you'll see that it's edge stitched along the edge here, and when I flip this over, it's edge stitched along the edge on this side as well. So it looks exactly the same on both sides. Now, let's go to the iron, and I'll show you how to make this nice and pretty again, because you see it's all kind of hanging out. So we're going to make it pretty. We're going to press it. All right, so you see this is popping up, and we don't want it to. We want it to lay nice and flat. The steam on an iron is great, okay? So if you just just steam it, hit it with the steam, and then just kind of curve it around so you're making sure it's laying nice and flat. Like I said, bias is very bendable, so it's going to do all kinds of nice things for you. All right, so when you're finished, you see it's all laying nice and flat now. So that's bias. This is called single bias. Now, also in the industry, this is considered as a two-step operation, because we had to sew it first and then we had to fold it and sew it again. In the industry, they actually have a tool or an attachment that's on the machine. It's called a binder. And the binder looks like a flute that kind of just goes into the presser foot. So the fabric is fed through and then it's folded like this once it gets under the presser foot. And then the fabric itself is in between, and it's just one step. It's just one single needle step. It's really fast. If you have a home machine that has the binder, that's awesome. Some good home machines will have that binder. But this is doing it as a two-step direction without a binder.